Before we begin, how are you feeling today? I hope you're okay and taking care of yourself. If today was a bad day, I'm glad you're here. Take a deep breath. This moment is yours. Ready? Let's begin. You don't need to believe in ghosts to feel haunted. Sometimes all it takes is a notification, a flash of light in the dark, a message that arrives too early or far too late. We built these platforms to connect with each other, to share memories, to say, look, I was here. But what if something else is watching? What if something older, quieter, more patient is using the same network to reach back? Not everything that fades from your story disappears. Some of it lingers, some of it follows. In this series, we step into 8 true accounts of people who use Snapchat the way most of us do, without thinking twice. Quick posts, late night updates, filters, locations, reactions. But the deeper they looked into the screen, the more the screen looked back. These aren't stories about algorithms gone wrong or digital pranks. These are encounters, fragments of something hiding behind glass and code, reaching through the apps we carry in our pockets, the ones we sleep beside at night. Each tale is rooted in a real place, told by someone who never expected to be haunted, at least not by their own reflection. You may never have thought twice about who's watching your story or where your photo really goes when it disappears. But after tonight, you might. Because the scariest thing about these stories isn't that they're supernatural. It's how close they feel, how familiar, how easily they could have been yours. Maybe it's nothing. Maybe it's just a glitch, a recycled frame, a delayed push. But if your phone buzzes during this video and no one's supposed to be messaging you, ask yourself this. Did you invite something in when you shared that last photo? Did you leave a door open when you tagged your location? When you stared too long into the lens? These aren't stories told to entertain. They're here to remind you, we were never alone in the dark. Even before the screens, even before the signal. And now, they don't need permission. Stories like these don't begin with screams or shadows. They begin with silence. With someone holding their phone just a moment too long. That's where we start, far from the city, deep in the stillness of the Smoky Mountains, where one snap, taken without thought, opened more than just a camera. It opened a path. Story 1, The Snap in the Smokies. The first time I went to the Great Smoky Mountains alone, I thought I needed solitude. I had just ended a long-term relationship and needed space to breathe, to escape. Photography was my therapy, and the Smokies in late October offered everything I was searching for. Dense mist, skeletal trees, and an eerie quiet that felt like the forest itself was holding its breath. I pitched my tent just off a lesser-known trail outside Elkmont, far enough from the campgrounds to avoid families, and far enough from cell reception to pretend the rest of the world didn't exist. The only person I saw that first day was a man in his 50s named Don, who was loading gear into his truck at the trailhead. He wore a faded Tennessee Volunteers hat and smelled faintly of tobacco. We chatted briefly. He warned me about bears, the sudden cold, and people who wander too far and forget the way back. I laughed politely. He didn't. On the second evening, as the sun began to dip behind the ridgeline, I took out my phone to snap a photo of the mist creeping over the forest floor. I knew it wouldn't upload, but I like documenting things on Snapchat. It helped me feel connected, even in the middle of nowhere. That's when the first notification came in. New snap from unknown. I paused, confused. There was no signal. I opened it anyway. It was a blurry photo, taken from behind me. I could see myself, slightly turned, my hand outstretched, holding the phone. My breath caught. I turned around immediately, scanning the trees, but there was nothing. Just mist, pine and silence so thick it rang in my ears. I told myself it was cached data, something I must have missed before losing signal. I turned off my phone and zipped it into my pack. I didn't sleep well that night. The next morning, I hiked deeper into the woods, following a stream that snaked through moss-covered rocks. I found a spot where the water pooled into a small basin and sat there for hours, sketching trees and taking pictures. It felt normal again, safe, until I got back to camp and turned on my phone. Another snap. This time, it was a video. It started shaky, walking through the same creek I had visited hours earlier. Then, the camera tilted up and zoomed in on me, sitting on a rock, drawing, alone, but not alone. The video ended just as I turned my head slightly, as if I had heard something. I stood frozen, phone in hand, and I felt it. The sensation that someone had been there, that someone might still be. I called out, loudly, more to disrupt the silence than to reach anyone. No one answered. There was no signal, no reception. And yet, someone had not only recorded me, but sent me the footage. I tried to laugh it off that night, convincing myself it was some ranger with a weird sense of humor, or maybe a lost hiker trying to be funny. But the truth is, I barely slept. I lay in my tent, clutching my bear spray like it could ward off whatever kind of presence could move through the trees without sound. The third message came just before dawn. A simple photo of my tent. From above, like it had been taken from a tree. I didn't even want to look at it for more than a second. I packed everything, fast, left the tent poles behind, just shoved what I could into my bag and hiked. I didn't care which direction. I didn't eat, didn't drink, just moved. I made it back to the parking lot around noon, exhausted and trembling. My phone buzzed again as soon as the signal returned. One last snap. It was a picture of me walking out of the woods. Captioned, "Next time, don't leave so soon." Don was still there, leaning against his truck with a mug of coffee. He squinted when he saw me, and I must have looked like hell because he asked if I was okay. I tried to explain, voice shaking, showing him the photos. He didn't say much, just looked at me for a long time, then muttered, "That's not the first time someone's come out of there spooked. Some places don't want company." I reported everything, filed with park rangers and local police, but there were no signs of anyone else in the area. No extra tracks, nothing on the trail cams. It became another strange report lost in a stack of unexplained incidents. For weeks after, I couldn't be alone in a room without checking every window. I stopped taking photos. I stopped going outside at dusk. But the fear faded slowly, like frost melting from glass. Life resumed. I convinced myself it was a one-time thing, a sick prank, a glitch. I started hiking again. Not alone though, never alone. There are things we do to feel connected. Snapping photos, sharing stories, telling people where we are and what we're doing. But sometimes that thread of connection isn't harmless. Sometimes it's the thing that lets something, find you. I learned something out there, in the Smokies. Something I should have known all along. When you're alone in the woods, you're never really alone. And if you feel watched, it's probably because you are. I didn't tell many people about what happened. Most wouldn't believe me anyway. My sister Jenna was one of the few I confided in. She's a park ranger out west in Utah, and when I told her everything, she didn't laugh. She just got really quiet. Then she said, "We've had hikers talk about stuff like that. Weird tech, remote sightings, phones acting up." I asked her if she thought it was someone playing a prank. She said maybe, but the way she said it didn't sound convincing. A week later, she sent me an article about a missing college student who had been hiking alone in Shenandoah, Virginia. Her last social media post had been a Snapchat story of trees. Nothing unusual, but that story had been viewed over 300 times, and no one could explain why. Her account was locked, her phone never found. It chilled me in a different way, not just because it was familiar, but because it reminded me how small we really are in places like that, and how little we understand about the connections we feed every day, even from the palm of our hands. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I had stayed one more night, if I had ignored that final message, if I had tried to find whoever was watching me, but I didn't. And maybe that's why I'm still here, telling this story instead of becoming one. If you ever go into the Smokies, don't post where you are, don't tag the trees. Some eyes don't blink, and some watchers don't lose interest. They just wait. And if this story made something shift in your gut, trust it, and maybe, just maybe, stick around. There's more coming. But the woods aren't the only place that watches back. Sometimes it's the open spaces, the ones filled with people, sun, and noise, that hide the most unsettling quiet. On Venice Beach, under the golden California light, a new kind of vanishing begins. Not of bodies, but of identity. Story 2. Vanishing points at Venice Beach. I moved to Venice Beach, thinking the ocean would heal something in me. I was 21, fresh out of a chaotic breakup, and convinced that sunlight and salt air could wash away what months of therapy hadn't. I rented a small studio apartment just 3 blocks from the boardwalk, close enough to smell fried food every night and hear the hum of late-night skateboarders passing under my window. Venice was vibrant, loud, and strange, but I liked it that way. It made my loneliness feel less obvious. My days revolved around art classes and long walks. I often spent my afternoons sketching people on the beach, sharing quick snaps of strangers and scenery on my Snapchat story. Nothing deep, just palm trees, surfers, graffiti walls, and sometimes a shot of my bare feet in the sand. It felt harmless. Unfiltered pieces of my new life, seen by a handful of followers I barely knew anymore. One afternoon, I noticed a user I didn't recognize had started viewing every story. Username, Saunders Reflection. No profile photo, no snaps of their own, just lurking. At first, I thought it was a bot or someone from school who had made a new account. I didn't think much of it until they replied. It was a message with no words, just a photo. My photo reposted. But something about it was off. It was a shot I had taken of the boardwalk. Colorful vendors, families, a busker playing violin, but in their version, the people were missing. The benches were empty. The sky looked dull and gray, even though the original had been lit in golden hour. It was my image, but drained of life. I stared at the screen for a while, unsettled, but told myself it was some kind of weird filter or AI trick. I screenshotted it and tried to forget. The next day, it happened again. I had posted a photo of myself drinking iced coffee outside a cafe on Pacific Avenue. Nothing special, just a casual selfie. But Dutcher Reflection sent their version. Same angle, same composition, but my face was gone. The cup hovered in the air. My hand was blurred out, my seat empty. It was like I had been erased. I didn't tell anyone at first, not even Noah, the guy I had started casually seeing. He was a graphic designer who lived above a pizza shop and had a soft spot for conspiracy theories. He might have found it funny, but I didn't. There was something invasive about it, like someone was documenting the pieces of my life and stripping them of proof that I existed at all. When I finally brought it up, Noah tried to lighten the mood. Maybe it's an art project, he said. Some sad digital ghost playing with perception. That night, I received a third image. It was of me and Noah walking along the beach at dusk, from behind. We hadn't posted anything that day, but there we were, mid-step, the outline of our shadows stretching across the sand. Only in this version, Noah was still visible. I wasn't, just his hand hanging in the air, holding nothing. I didn't sleep. The next morning, I found a printed copy of that photo taped to the front door of my building. I showed it to Noah, shaking. He stopped smiling. He offered to call the police, but I said no. What would I tell them? That a stranger online was sending me ghost versions of my own photos? That I was being deleted one pixel at a time? Instead, I deleted Snapchat, changed my number, turned off every location setting I could find. I stopped posting completely. I even stopped drawing. It all felt watched, but the messages didn't stop. A week later, I got an email from an unknown address. No subject line, just one attachment, a short video. It began on the Venice boardwalk, panning across the skate park. The camera moved smoothly, eerily steady. As it tilted upward, I saw myself in the distance, near the palm trees. Only I wasn't moving. I was frozen in place, mid-laugh, like a mannequin left in the wrong world. Then, the camera slowly moved behind me. I braced for something to jump out, but nothing did. The video ended with a single frame, my back, as if I were walking away from myself. That night, Noah stayed over. We barely spoke. He didn't have any answers either. Just held me as I stared at the ceiling, heart thudding, waiting for another message. 2 days later, I walked to the beach alone. I needed air, noise, something real. It was crowded that day, vendors yelling, music playing, seagulls shrieking. For a moment, I felt normal again, alive, until a child ran past me, holding a phone, and said loudly to his friend, "She's the one in the glitchy videos." I stopped cold. I turned, heart pounding, but they were already gone, lost in the crowd. I walked home in a daze, sat on my bed, staring at my blank phone screen. No notifications, no messages, just silence. And for the first time, I realized the worst part wasn't being erased. It was the idea that others could still see me, distorted, misremembered, like a rumor of a person that once existed. If there's one thing I know now, it's this. What we share doesn't disappear. Not really. Sometimes it lingers in ways we can't predict, warped through the eyes of strangers, watched, altered, reposted. Sometimes the version of you that lives online becomes more real than the one walking around in your skin. So be careful with what you send out there. Be mindful of what you leave behind. And if you've ever felt like you're slipping through the cracks of your own life, like something's pulling you out of frame, trust that feeling. You're not paranoid. You're not alone. Weeks passed, but the tension never fully left my body. I'd walk through the neighborhood and catch people glancing at me a moment too long, as if trying to place where they'd seen me before. In coffee shops, I'd hear the ding of airdrop alerts and flinch. One night, Noah confessed something that chilled me more than anything else. "I think I saw you in a video," he said, hesitating. It popped up on Reddit, a thread about cursed accounts. I didn't want to show you. I asked him to describe it. He said it looked like me, but not really. The way I moved was wrong, slower, like I was glitching. "It's like watching someone pretending to be you," he said, eyes wide with something between fear and guilt. "I think they're spreading it. I never found that video. I stopped trying, because part of me thinks if I go looking for it, I'll see something I can't unsee. Some version of me that doesn't blink, doesn't breathe, doesn't leave. And maybe, by acknowledging her, I'd give her permission to replace me entirely." So I did the only thing I could, I unplugged. No more apps, no more stories, no more curated proof that I'm real. Now, when I walk along the beach, I don't take pictures. I don't post. I just watch the water. But sometimes I still feel it. The sensation that somewhere in someone else's screen, I'm still out there, frozen, watching back. And if one day you scroll past a story and feel like the person in it is almost, but not quite, real, ask yourself, which version are you seeing, and which version are you becoming? From the ocean's edge to the streets of the French Quarter, the signal follows. Some cities don't forget. Some stories whisper through brick and wrought iron. And when a voice returns through an old cathedral alley, even silence starts to sound personal. Story 3. Last snap at the French Quarter. I arrived in New Orleans with a camera, a notebook, and the illusion that I understood how stories work. I was 29, a sound designer by trade, chasing a freelance project that promised 3 weeks of recording ambient audio across Louisiana for a podcast that would likely never get finished. But I wasn't there for the paycheck. I came for the streets, specifically the ones that creaked with music and rot and echoes. The French Quarter felt alive in a way that made the rest of the world feel artificial. I wanted to listen to it, and maybe, in some strange way, be heard by it too. I rented a room above a bookstore on Royal Street where the owner, Eloise, lived on the top floor with 3 cats and a distrust of tourists. She wasn't exactly warm, but she told me where to avoid stepping after midnight and which buildings felt off. Some walls breathe wrong, she said one night without looking up from her crossword. I laughed. She didn't. I started each day before dawn, walking the quarter with a directional mic and a pair of headphones, collecting the early morning sounds. Distant saxophones, footsteps on stone, the rumble of streetcars blocks away. Sometimes I'd take a few photos and post them to Snapchat. Just quick flashes, lamp-lit windows, wrought iron balconies, faded murals. I rarely added captions. The images spoke enough. The first strange snap came after I posted a photo of an alley behind St. Louis Cathedral. It had been empty when I passed, just fog and cobblestones. But someone replied to the story with the same photo, except in their version, there was a figure standing near the archway, barefoot, head bowed. The timestamp matched mine exactly. I stared at it for minutes, scrolling between my original and theirs. Mine was quiet, cold. Theirs felt wrong. The fog in their image was thicker, the shadows deeper. The figure was too clear to be a trick of light, too still to be someone caught mid-step. I asked Eloise if she knew anything about that alley. She didn't even glance up. "Which one?" she asked. "The one behind the cathedral," I said. Her pen stopped moving. "Don't post pictures of that alley." That night I had trouble sleeping. I kept thinking about the figure, how their presence had gone unnoticed in real time but revealed itself through the lens of someone else's device. I dreamt of alleys and echoing footsteps and voices that didn't belong to the living. The next day, I didn't take photos. I just recorded sound. The silence didn't help. The quarter always hummed with some low-level presence. Tourists, wind, distant music. But that day felt oddly hushed, like the city itself was holding its breath. I walked without recording, watching windows, catching my reflection in shop fronts that suddenly looked unfamiliar. My face seemed thinner, washed out, like the light was avoiding me. That evening, I received another snap. No message. Just a photo of me sitting on the edge of Jackson Square, headphones on, eyes closed. I hadn't posted anything, hadn't spoken to anyone. But the angle of the photo was from above, like it had been taken from a balcony. My first instinct was to run outside, look around, but I knew I wouldn't find anyone. The quarter was all corners and shutters and eyes you couldn't see. I showed Eloise. She didn't flinch. "Delete the app," she said. "Not everything wants to be seen, and not everything you see wants to let go of you." I didn't delete it. I needed to understand what was happening. I told myself I was documenting something bigger, something hidden, that I was a witness to something few others would ever experience. That's the lie people like me tell ourselves before things go too far. 2 days later, I made the mistake of replying to one of the snaps. It was a video this time, recorded at 3:12 a.m. It showed my own room. The angle was from the bookshelf near my bed, the camera panning slowly, deliberately, over my sleeping body. At the end of the video, there was a whisper. I replayed it a dozen times, isolated the audio. It wasn't in English. It wasn't anything I recognized. I replied with a single word. "Who?" The account vanished. No history, no name, no trace. But the next morning, there was a new snap. A photo of the same alley behind the cathedral. Only this time, I was in it. Standing in the exact same place as the figure had been in the first image. Barefoot, head bowed. I hadn't left the apartment. That night, Eloise knocked on my door. She never had before. She held an old photo album, the leather cracked and worn. Inside were faded prints of people who had stayed in the room I was renting. Tourists, travelers, artists. Most looked happy, until the final photos, versions of the same alley, over and over again. In each one, a person stood where I had been, slowly blurring into nothing. She pointed at one image in particular. "He left in the middle of the night," she said softly. "Told me he felt like the city was remembering him wrong. I left the next day. I didn't pack everything. I took only what I could carry. I deleted Snapchat. I changed my number. I moved back to Atlanta and didn't speak about it for months. But sometimes when the streets are empty, I hear that same whisper through my headphones. Not loud, not clear, just there. And one time, I got a postcard with no return address, just a printed image. The alley behind the cathedral. In the corner of the photo, barely visible, a figure stood. Barefoot, head bowed. If I've learned anything, it's this. Not all stories want to be told. Some places carry echoes that latch onto people who listen too closely. So if you go to the French Quarter and you feel like a part of you is lingering too long in a reflection or in a photo someone else took, leave. Don't try to understand it. Don't try to chase it. And never reply to a message that comes after midnight, because some echoes don't want to fade. Some of them want to stay with you. And if this story made your breath hitch for even a second, maybe you've heard one of them too. Stick around. They don't like being forgotten. You think distance might help. That high altitudes and fresh air could keep whatever this is from following. But reflections work differently in the mountains, especially when the glass doesn't just show you, it remembers you. In the Rockies, even your shadow isn't your own. Story 4. Reflection in the Rockies. When I booked a solo weekend in Estes Park, I told myself it was for the views. The kind of mountain air you can't fake, where pine cuts through your lungs and the silence isn't empty, it hums. I told myself it was for my photography portfolio, for a change of pace, for healing. The truth was, I was running. From burnout, from a stalled relationship, from the kind of sadness that doesn't show up on your face but seeps into your habits. I thought if I took enough beautiful pictures, maybe I'd trick myself into feeling better. The lodge I stayed in was old, wooden, and charming in the way only places built before electricity became standard can be. It sat near the edge of a small lake that reflected the Rockies like a mirror held just so. They called it Echo Pines. The receptionist, a man named Nate who looked too young to be that tired, gave me a room on the second floor and warned me to keep the windows locked at night. Sometimes the wind does weird things, he said. Things don't always sound like what they are. I spent the first day wandering the trail that looped behind the lake, taking photos and recording voice memos for a project I knew I'd never finish. Everything looked still, crisp, perfect. I posted a single photo to Snapchat that evening, a shot of the lake, glass still with my silhouette faint in the corner. No caption, just mood. That night, I reviewed some of my shots on my phone before bed. As I scrolled through, I noticed something strange. The image I had posted earlier now showed two silhouettes. One was mine. The other, slightly taller, hunched, stood just a few feet behind me, head tilted. I blinked, thinking I had grabbed the wrong file. But it was my post, my angle, just altered. I deleted it, more annoyed than afraid. Probably a glitch, or some kind of bug in the filter settings. The next morning, I woke up to find a new photo in my saved memories. I hadn't taken it. It was another shot of the lake. This time from inside the lodge, from the hallway just outside my door. My reflection was in the window. Only I hadn't been in the hallway. Not that I remembered. I asked Nate if someone had access to my room. He gave me a tired look and said no. Rooms here. They keep memories, he added, like it was a joke. It didn't land. That afternoon, I didn't go out. I stayed inside, camera off, phone down. But around dusk, I walked past the mirror near the stairwell. I paused. In the reflection, I wasn't alone. There was someone behind me, barefoot, soaked, mouth slightly open like she was gasping. Her clothes looked like mine, but older, faded, water damaged. When I turned, the hallway was empty. When I looked back at the mirror, she was gone. I didn't sleep that night. The next morning, I planned to leave. I packed everything before sunrise, heart pounding with every creak of the floorboards. But when I stepped into the hallway, everything was reversed. The numbers on the doors were flipped. My room number, 205, was now written backward. The mirror near the stairs reflected light that didn't exist. I reached for the rail and it caught my breath when I saw my hand in the mirror move a fraction too late. I didn't understand what was happening. It wasn't fear at first. It was disorientation, the kind that makes you doubt your own senses. I left without checking out, without looking back. As I reached the parking lot, I glanced at my phone. There was a new snap from an unknown account. It was a video. It began with a slow pan of the lake. The reflection on the water shimmered unnaturally, rippling without cause. Then it turned toward the lodge, up the path I had just taken. I saw myself, walking, fast, bag in hand, but there was no sound, just a faint static. As I reached the car in the video, the perspective shifted and moved into the passenger side. The video ended with a close-up of my face, taken from inside the car. I hadn't even gotten in yet. That night, back in Denver, I sat in my apartment with every light on, every mirror covered. I couldn't bring myself to look at anything reflective. I deleted every photo from the trip, blocked every unknown account, turned off all my notifications. Still, it found me. A week later, I walked past a storefront downtown and caught my reflection moving slower than I was. Just a beat behind, like she was remembering, not following. That version of me looked older, paler, like she had stayed in Echo Pines, waiting. I don't use Snapchat anymore, or mirrors if I can help it. I take pictures on film now. It feels safer, like it can't follow me through silver and glass. If there's anything I've learned, it's this. reflections are not passive. They don't just show you, they watch. They remember versions of you you've already forgotten, and sometimes they want to come back. So, if you ever visit a place that feels too still, too perfect, be careful what you capture. Don't trust the images that find their way back to you, and if you ever see yourself where you shouldn't be, turn around, leave. Because if you stay too long, you might not come back alone. It's strange, the things you begin to question after an experience like that. I stopped trusting photographs. I stopped waving at myself in mirrored elevators. I even started dreaming differently. In those dreams, I'm always watching someone who looks like me. Same haircut, same posture, but she never turns around. She just stares into windows, waiting. One night, I dreamed she walked out of the reflection and laid down beside me in bed. I woke up cold and alone, but the pillow next to mine had an indent I couldn't explain. I tried telling a friend once, Kayla, someone I used to hike with before I moved. She listened gently, like you do when someone's unwell. Then she asked, "Are you sure you're the one who came back?" She meant it as a joke, but neither of us laughed. That was the last time we talked. I've learned to move forward, even if something is a step behind me. Maybe that's all we ever do. Leave pieces of ourselves in glass and chrome, scattered across old motel rooms, forgotten passwords, social media memories. Most of the time, nothing follows. But sometimes, when the silence is just too perfect and your own reflection tilts its head before you do, maybe that's your signal to stop looking. Some places don't take your picture, they take something else. And if you don't leave quickly enough, they'll take what's left. So when you go hiking in the Rockies, admire the view. Let it take your breath away, but don't let it keep your face. And don't look too long into the lake. She's still in there, waiting for someone else to recognize her. We often look for answers in wide, wild places, but some truths wait buried beneath stone and soil, under names too faded to recall. In Washington, D.C., one cemetery holds more than memory. And Snapchat, once again, becomes a doorway someone or something can still use. Story 5. Offline in Oak Hill Cemetery. I never intended to end up in a cemetery on my day off. I'd taken the train into D.C. just to walk. No meetings, no deadlines, no endless buzzing from my phone. The weather was mild in that strange late autumn way. Leaves still clinging to some trees, the light already starting to go dim by early afternoon. I found myself outside the gates of Oak Hill Cemetery, almost by accident. Its wrought iron arches and winding stone paths felt more like an invitation than a barrier. I stepped inside with no real plan, just an urge to be somewhere still. I wandered the curved paths for a while, passing moss-covered names and crumbling statues. It was beautiful in a way that made you speak quietly, even if no one was around. I remember thinking how peaceful it was, how disconnected it felt from the rest of the city. I pulled out my phone to take a few pictures, instinctively opening Snapchat. I took a quick shot of a marble angel near the edge of a hill and added it to my story. No filter, no caption, just the stillness of the place. A few minutes later, I got a notification. Snap from unknown. I opened it, assuming it was a glitch. What loaded was a photo of me, taken from behind as I stood looking at the same angel statue. But in this version, the statue wasn't still. Its head was tilted slightly downward, toward me. I froze, looked behind me. No one. I closed the app, told myself it was a bug, a cached image, maybe even something from a prior visit I didn't remember. I'd been tired lately, distracted, but the air around me had changed. It wasn't colder, not exactly, just heavier, like sound didn't carry the same way anymore. I turned off my phone and slipped it into my jacket pocket. No more pictures. I decided to head toward the back of the grounds where fewer tourists wandered. The deeper I walked into the cemetery, the quieter it became. Even the wind seemed to hesitate, rustling only the lowest branches of the bare trees. I paused near a family plot surrounded by a rusted fence. I didn't read the names. I just stared at the ground. Something about the pattern of leaves unsettled me, as if they had been placed rather than fallen. My hand instinctively reached for my phone, but I resisted. I didn't want another snap. I didn't want another angle of myself that I hadn't approved. Still, the vibration came. I pulled the phone out and looked at the screen. Another notification. Saved to memories. Only I hadn't opened the camera. I hadn't taken anything. The photo was black and white, grainy. It showed a grave marker I didn't recognize, cracked in half. At the bottom of the image, in blurry digital handwriting, were the words, "You're standing on me." My stomach dropped. I stepped back, slowly, scanning the ground. There were no fresh graves, no disturbed soil, just that same eerie stillness. I left then, walked faster than I should have. I didn't look back. I didn't check my phone again until I was already outside the gates. The moment I stepped through, the air seemed lighter, like I'd emerged from underwater. Later that evening, I tried to show the photo to my roommate, Aaron, but it was gone. No memory, no cache, nothing in my story history. Just the vague imprint of those words burned into my mind. Erin believed me, sort of. She said maybe I'd hallucinated, that I'd been stressed, that I needed rest. She didn't understand. She hadn't felt that pressure in the wear. She hadn't seen the way the statue moved when it thought I wasn't looking. I didn't sleep much that night. Around 3 a.m., I woke up drenched in sweat, heart pounding like it was trying to warn me. The apartment was silent except for the hum of the fridge, but my phone screen was glowing. I hadn't touched it. A video was playing on loop. No sender, no app open. Just the video, taken from the ground, tilted slightly, as if the phone had been left at the base of a tree. In the frame, I was standing completely still, not blinking, not breathing, staring directly into the lens. Behind me, the angel statue. Only this time, the statue's wings were outstretched. I threw the phone across the room. When I picked it up again, the video was gone. The next day, I called in sick. I told Aaron I needed time away and took a bus to the edge of Maryland. I stayed in a cheap motel for 2 days, barely slept, barely ate, just sat there trying to make sense of what happened. I deleted Snapchat. I reset the phone. I even bought a burner just to feel disconnected. But disconnection is a myth. A week later, a letter arrived at our apartment. No stamp, no return address, just a piece of glossy photo paper inside. It was a photo of my room, taken from the ceiling, looking straight down. My bed, my desk, my shelves, empty. Except for me, lying in bed, eyes wide open. I checked the corners, the vents, everything. There was no camera, no hole in the ceiling, no logical way the image could have been captured. That's when I realized this wasn't about logic. It never had been. Oak Hill wasn't just a cemetery, it was a collection site. A place that gathered echoes, held on to presences that didn't want to fade. And I had wandered in like a fool with a camera and an open signal. Some places don't like to be recorded. Some moments don't want to be shared. And when you try to take something from them, a piece of quiet, a glimpse of beauty, they take something back. Now, even offline, I feel watched. Not just through screens, but in stillness, in silence, in the way shadows shift when they shouldn't. So if you ever find yourself walking through Oak Hill, don't open your phone. Don't tag the statues. Don't let the app know where you are, because even when you're offline, they're still uploading you. And if this story made you second guess the next photo, good. That means there's still time. Stick around, but stay out of the frame. Above the graves, above the trees, the stories don't end. They board flights, cross terminals, sit silently in airport gates. LAX may never sleep, but at 3 a.m., you begin to notice who or what might be waiting at the end of the runway. Story 6, Dead Air at LAX. Working as a flight attendant sounds glamorous until you've done it long enough to forget where you are when you wake up. I was 31, somewhere between exhausted and numb, and had flown into Los Angeles International Airport for the 3rd time that month. The light shift again, dead hours between midnight and dawn, when the terminals empty out and everything echoes too much. I had a 5-hour layover and nowhere to go, so I did what I always did. Sat in an empty gate near the end of Terminal 4, plugged in my earbuds, and stared at nothing. That night, LAX felt quieter than usual. Not peaceful, just abandoned. Even the custodial staff seemed thinner than normal. I sat by the window, stared at the blinking lights along the tarmac, and opened Snapchat without really thinking. It had become habit. Scroll, maybe post a picture of something mundane to prove I was still here, still real. I took a snap of the empty row of chairs across from me, captioned it, "Airport Limbo." No one responded. About 10 minutes later, I got a notification. New snap from unknown. The photo was from behind me. I recognized the back of my own head, my jacket collar, the faint outline of Gate 48B's sign above. But the most disturbing part wasn't the angle. It was the timestamp. It was taken 12 minutes before I had sat down. I stood up quickly, scanning the terminal. No one. Just the flicker of a vending machine light and the soft squeal of distant wheels. I told myself it had to be a fluke. Maybe the app glitched. Maybe I was more tired than I realized. Still, I moved to a different seat, closer to the emergency exit, somewhere with more space behind me. The second snap came 20 minutes later. This time it was a video. Grainy footage, silent. It showed an empty cabin, the exact layout of the aircraft I'd just flown in on. The camera panned slowly down the aisle. Every seat was vacant except one. Mine. The image froze on it. My bag in the overhead, my jacket slumped across the back. No people, no crew, no light beyond the dull glow from the exit signs. I hadn't recorded anything. I closed the app, hands trembling, and locked my phone. I tried to rationalize it. Maybe it was an old recording from another time. Maybe someone else on the crew thought it would be funny. Maybe I was losing my mind. When I looked up, I noticed a man sitting across the terminal who hadn't been there before. Dark coat, hat pulled low, staring straight at me. I blinked, and he was gone. I went to the restroom, splashed cold water on my face, told myself it was exhaustion, delayed sleep paranoia. I returned to the gate and found a different corner, one with mirrors, one where I could see who was behind me. I didn't open the app again until I boarded the crew shuttle. As we pulled away from the terminal, my phone buzzed again. It was a snap, a photo taken from the last row of the shuttle. I was sitting alone in the front, earbuds in, staring out the window. The caption read, "You're almost home." There had been no one else on that shuttle. When I got to the layover hotel, I threw my phone in the sink and ran the tap. I didn't care if it broke. I slept with the lights on, curtains open, shoes on, just in case I needed a run. The next morning, the front desk handed me an envelope at checkout. No return address. Inside was a printed photo. It was me. sitting in the jump seat of a 737, eyes closed, sleeping. The photo was taken from seat 31F. I had never flown that route, never worked that plane. The airline denied access to CCTV, said no one had boarded the aircraft after shutdown, said the photo couldn't have come from any company device. I quit flying 2 weeks later, sold my suitcase, deleted every app, bought a flip phone and moved to a place where the closest airport was over 2 hours away. But I still get snaps, different usernames, blank profiles, all showing places I haven't visited yet, airports I've never been to, terminals I've only dreamed of, always from behind me, always just a few minutes before I arrive. Last week I got one that stopped me cold, a photo of me standing in my own hallway, at home, keys in hand, captioned, "You're back." I never posted that. So if you work in travel, or even just pass through airports often, take this as a warning. Some connections don't need Wi-Fi. Some signals aren't yours to trace. Snapchat is supposed to expire, but sometimes the ones that linger, the ones that arrive early, they're not coming from anyone you know. They're reminders that someone or something got there first. So keep your eyes open when you board. Sit near the aisle, and if you feel a buzz in your pocket before you check in, don't open it, because by the time you see the snap, they're already with you. And if this story felt like deja vu, maybe it's not your first time hearing it. Stick around. We're still boarding, from air to underground. The subway is meant to carry us forward, but sometimes it loops. Sometimes the lights flicker longer than they should. And when a snap shows a version of you that shouldn't exist, there's nowhere to run. Not in the tunnels beneath New York. Story 7. Snap from the sub. I used to think the subway was the last place you could disappear without anyone noticing. I took the 6 train every night from my office in Midtown down toward the Bronx, usually sometime after 10 p.m. By then, most of the commuters were gone. What was left were the exhausted, the half asleep, the strange, and people like me who preferred the quiet hum of underground movement to the chaos above. I didn't talk to anyone. I didn't make eye contact. I sat with my earbuds in, hoodie up, face buried in my phone. It was routine. It was safe. Or at least I thought it was. That Thursday night felt no different at first. I boarded near 51st Street, second to last car. There were maybe 5 of us total, scattered in silence. I snapped a quick picture of the empty seats across from me and posted it on my story. Captioned it "Ghost Car," just something to fill the gap before I zoned out for the ride. The train lurched forward. Tunnel lights blinked by. I opened my notifications. There it was. New snap from unknown. I rolled my eyes. Spam, probably. Or one of those fake accounts that try to sell sketchy links. I tapped anyway. The video opened in silence. It showed the inside of my subway car. Same layout, same color tones. But in the video, it was empty. No me, no passengers. Just flickering light, swaying straps, and an endless hum. The timestamp was 3 minutes in the future. I looked up. Everyone was still there. The man in the beanie, the older woman holding a tote bag, the guy with AirPods near the door. I looked back down. The video ended with a faint reflection in the window. A shape standing where I sat. But it wasn't me. I switched subway cars at the next stop. I didn't care how weird it looked. I stood up the second the doors opened and walked 2 cars down. This one was more crowded. I sat near the middle, between a guy watching basketball highlights and a woman flipping through a novel. I tried to forget the snap. I told myself it was a glitch. Maybe it was a save video from earlier. Maybe I wasn't as awake as I thought. But 5 minutes later, my phone buzzed again. Another snap. This time it was a photo of the car I was now sitting in. It was dim, grainy, as if taken from a security feed. In it, all the other passengers were blurred, every face smudged, except mine. I looked up. Everyone around me was normal, reading, scrolling, yawning. I turned off my phone, slipped it in my jacket, didn't look again until I was standing on the platform at Hunts Point, alone, waiting for the train to leave. I opened the app one last time. There was a new story on my profile, one I hadn't posted. It was a short video. Me, sitting completely still. The passengers in the background fading, flickering, disappearing. And just before the video ended, I turned my head, slowly, to look at the camera. My eyes were wrong. Too wide, too still. I deleted the app that night, deleted everything. But the story didn't stop. My coworker Sam said he saw me in a video thread on Reddit, some urban exploration page sharing weird subway events. I asked him to show me. He couldn't find it again. 3 days later, a metro staffer stopped me on the platform. Said he'd seen me on the train last night. I hadn't ridden since that Thursday. He swore it was me. Swore I was just sitting there, not moving. That weekend, I went back. Same train, same time. I brought an old phone, no apps, no signal. I sat in the same seat from that first night. Across from me, a young woman lifted her phone and took a photo. I asked her why. She said, "You look like someone I follow. I haven't ridden the subway since, but the snaps keep coming. Different usernames, different angles. Always from trains I don't remember boarding. Always showing me, staring blankly, in cars that seem quieter than they should. Some nights, I hear the vibration even when the phone is off. So if you're on the subway and the car feels colder than it should be, if the lights flicker too long between stops, check your reflection. Make sure it moves when you do. And if you get a snap from a stranger and the person looks like you, don't open it. Some trains don't take you anywhere. They just keep moving, and sometimes they bring something back. If this story made you want to stand instead of sit, maybe it's not your first ride either. Stick around, just not too long underground. Not all stories are about places. Some are about people who vanish the moment you notice them. In Portland, one account appeared quietly, then rewrote the world around it. Not with violence, just with attention. Just enough to be remembered, and enough to make you question if you were ever the one watching. Story 8. The account that disappeared in Portland. I met him on a Thursday night in Portland, when the rain had settled into that quiet rhythm it kept for most of the fall. I was working the closing shift at a small cocktail bar off Burnside. Nothing fancy, just regulars, old jazz, and an espresso machine that hissed louder than the customers. He came in right before last call. Wore a dark hoodie, jeans, the kind of expression that says he's been thinking too hard about things that don't have answers. He ordered a gin and soda, then asked about the mural on the back wall. No one ever asked about the mural. I told him it had been there before I started. Something about fog and memory, I think. He just nodded and said it looked like something out of a dream. We talked until closing, the kind of conversation that felt like you'd known someone before you met them. I don't remember giving him my Snapchat. I don't remember him pulling out his phone. But the next day, he was on my contact list. No profile photo. Username was just a string of numbers, but he watched every story I posted that weekend. A picture of the rain-soaked street outside my apartment. A video of steam curling off a coffee cup. A close-up of the old vinyl spinning on my turntable. Then, on Sunday, I posted a story from work. Just a slow pan of the bar, lights low, bottles glowing like stained glass. He replied for the first time. Just a single word, empty. It gave me chills. Not because of what he said, but because of when. I was off that night. At first, I thought it was a mistake. Maybe I'd queued an old post without realizing. Maybe someone else had posted from the bar. But when I checked the timestamp, it lined up with a moment I had been at home, in bed, reading with the lights off. There was no one else working that night. The bar had been closed. The next day, I tried to message him. Just a casual, hey. No response, but he still watched everything. Every snap I posted, every location tag coffee shop, every moody sunset from my window. Never a reaction, never a reply. Just that quiet presence in the viewer list. Then the snaps started coming from him. They weren't messages, just uploads. Sometimes blurry photos of alleys I didn't recognize. Sometimes videos of sidewalks at night, always wet, always empty. The sound was distorted, too much static, too much hum. But always, near the end, the camera would turn toward a building, a doorway, a window. The third video was the worst. It was my apartment building. The camera panned slowly across the front, stopped at my window. You could see my curtains drawn, the outline of the floor lamp. Then the feed cut. I ran downstairs so fast I almost twisted my ankle, threw open the lobby door. No one was there. Nothing on the security cameras either. Just glitches, lines of static every time the camera turned toward the sidewalk. I stopped posting after that. Turned off location sharing. Deleted the app from my phone. For a few days, everything was quiet. Then my friend Elise asked about a photo I'd posted the night before. She said, it was beautiful. Foggy street, a silhouette in the distance. She thought it was part of some new photography series, but I hadn't posted anything. When I checked the archive, it was there. Timestamped at 2:17 a.m., taken from the alley behind my building. Same one I never walked through. I tried to show it to Elise. The snap was gone. That night, I got a message from the same account. First one in days. It just said, I was here before you. I reported the account. Tried to explain the timeline, the glitches, the GPS inconsistencies. Nothing came of it. Snapchat support couldn't find the account. Said the username didn't exist. Said maybe it had been deleted, except it still viewed my stories. Until one day, it didn't. The name vanished from my contacts, disappeared completely. But I kept getting snaps. Same kind of images, same warped streets, wrong reflections. Except now, they were coming from accounts that had no usernames, just blank spaces where the name should be. And in every image, the same figure started showing up. Never clear, just a blur. A shadow leaning into the frame, standing where the photographer should be. Then it showed up in my camera roll. A picture I never took. A mirror selfie, my bathroom. But the reflection was wrong. It wasn't looking at the camera. It was looking past me. I don't use Snapchat anymore. I barely take pictures. But the shadows still linger. Sometimes I see movement in my screens, tiny shifts in the black before it lights up. Sometimes my phone vibrates without a reason, as if something's trying to push through. If I've learned anything, it's this. Not everyone you meet online was meant to stay digital. Some presences aren't added, they're awakened. And when you open the wrong window at the wrong time, something might come through that doesn't want to be forgotten. So, if you meet someone who feels too familiar, too quick to understand you, too present in your digital world, pause. And if they disappear without a trace, don't go looking for them, because sometimes the ones who vanish were never really here at all. There are moments, even now, when I wonder if I imagined him. Not just the account, but the night we met. The drink, the mural, his voice. I've searched for that night in the security logs at the bar. There's a 15-minute window of corrupted footage between 1:45 and 2 a.m., right when we talked. Everyone else who came in that night paid with a card or left a tab. No record of a gin and soda. I even checked the mural. The colors had shifted somehow, grayer, duller, like the fog he described had seeped out and stayed. I touched the edge of the frame once, and my fingertips came away damp. No leak, no damage, just moisture. A thin layer that dried before I could show Elise. Sometimes I feel like he didn't disappear from the internet. He disappeared from time. Like something in that account was never supposed to connect with mine, but it did, and the result wasn't deletion, it was absorption. Now, even when I walk through the city, the streets feel glitchy. Lights flicker longer near certain intersections. My own reflection lags in the glass door of my building. And every once in a while, I'll pass someone and feel them pause, like they almost recognize me, like they've seen me before, in a snap, in a video, somewhere I never meant to be. Maybe the account didn't disappear. Maybe I did. 8 stories, 8 doors. And if you've made it here, you've walked through each one. But some doors don't close behind you. Some stories stay open, in the code, in the air between messages, and maybe, just maybe, in the eyes watching the screen right now. If you've made it this far, then you've already felt it. That lingering presence behind every snap. That chill just under the surface of ordinary moments. These 8 stories weren't about haunted houses or rituals in the woods. They were about something quieter, something closer. They were about what happens when the tools we use to share our lives start whispering back. When the screen stops reflecting and starts remembering. Snapchat was never built to hold memory. Its appeal was its impermanence. But we've learned, through shadows, reflections, whispers, and static, that nothing ever really disappears. Not completely. Not when intention lingers. Not when eyes are watching from the other side. Maybe you saw something familiar. A station you've stood in. A hallway you've walked through. A message you once received but brushed off. That's the thing with these stories. They don't feel distant. They feel like warnings wrapped in deja vu. So if you leave with anything, let it be this. Be careful what you post, and even more careful who's watching. Don't assume the account with no name, no photo, and no followers is empty. Sometimes it's the ones that stay silent that see the most. Sometimes it's the snaps you don't send that tell the real story. And if your phone buzzes tonight, if a snap comes through from someone you don't remember adding, think twice before you tap. There are still echoes in the code. Still figures hiding behind filters. Still watchers waiting for a moment when your guard slips. Some stories fade, others repeat, and some find new ways to be told. What you've heard tonight isn't the end, it's an opening. Because even when the app is closed, the memory remains. In the pixels, in the echoes of light, in the fragments of something watching, waiting, listening. So stay curious, but not too curious. And when you see the little icon at the corner of your screen, the one that shouldn't be there, ask yourself, who just saw you, and what did they see?